Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Film Production Podcast. This week we're going a bit less serious and we're talking about Marvel, which is exciting. I know it's a bit out of date now. Obviously, they're sort of having a bit of a hiatus from their films at the moment, but it's still an important thing to talk about, I think, because it's more to do with, you know, Disney, who own them and stuff and all that crazy stuff. But today we have Paddy.
Hello.
We have Brad.
Hello.
And we also have prospective student Jamie with us as well. So,
hello there. Right.
And we're all gonna have a chat about Marvel and stuff. And I have a lot of stuff prepared by Jules and Lucy. So thank you very much to them for doing all this for me, so that I just sort of show up. Everyone, how many people do you think went to see Avengers Endgame in its opening weekend? Let's have some guesses.
Oh, a lot.
I know how much it was opening weekend, so let's work it out.
I'm going to guess, this is a complete guess. I'm going to say about 100 million. Might be.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go up. I'm going to say about 200 million based on what I know how much it made in the weekend.
Jamie?
Oh, gosh. But yeah, 250 million.
Okay, so Brad was actually spot on. It was about 100 million people who went to
No
see
way.
it opening weekend, which is crazy for a film that had so many people go and watch it. I mean, there was a whole build up to it, but I'd really like, do you know what, before I just chat endlessly, I want to hear what you guys personally, your sort of standings are on Marvel, their films, and just give me a quick rundown from each of you so that like people sort of know like what side your guys are going to be on. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to? Since Brad, you won. Do you want to start?
Okay. Yeah. So my standpoint on Marvel, I love their films. I think what they do is absolutely incredible because they built their own cinematic universe. They've established the context of each superhero, and they've built that kind of context, and they bring it all together in the Avengers films. And I think that's why they've been so successful, because you can have your favorite film or like your favorite superhero, you know more about that character, and there's a lot of character development throughout the universe of the cinematic universe, but seeing them all come together in one big film, well, two if you're counting Infinity War and Endgame, it's absolutely spectacular, and it's really innovative as well. So like I think that's the innovation in this film. Films are often popular because there's something different about them, and I think Marvel are the first to bring like these characters all together in one big film, and that's why I really love them. So I think that's where I stand. I'm a huge Marvel fan, so that's where I stand.
Yeah. Jamie, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. I've never really been that into Marvel movies, to be honest. I think just comic books in general, because I think personally, I just think that the trope of having the good guy versus the bad guy, and then they just go to battle. I just find that a little bit kind of cliche and a little bit boring, because I prefer films and stories that, you know, explore people and their emotions and kind of how they interact with each other, and as opposed to being focused on the action.
Nice, good. Okay, and we've also got Paddy. What's your standing?
Hello. I'm actually sort of a bit of a middle ground. I know that's a safe spot to be, but it's mainly because for a long time I was kind of like the Marvel films or superhero films, and then, you know, I had watched a couple of them, and, you know, I did go to see Endgame. I do thoroughly enjoy the experience, and they are brilliant, and I agree to some point what both you guys are saying. I think that I was just rewatching a scene from Avengers Assemble with Mark Ruffalo and Scarlett Johansson when he's in India. That's always been one of my favorite scenes in particular, because that shows that level of humanity that some people believe that isn't there. But because those small moments like that are, you know, they're sidelined by the huge, monstrous CGI behemoth that is the majority of these movies, it's hard to put a place. But I think in general, I think they are enjoyable, and I think there is room for the emotion there and humanity. But it's a personal preference. I think the biggest issue that people are refusing to say, it's the money. It's nothing to do with the films, it's the money. That's the biggest issue.
Yeah, I'm sort of on a standpoint where I like some of the films, but I can't get behind watching all of them. And I think the whole build up to the ultimate conclusion of all these films coming together, like I want to watch a 30-minute film minimum. Like if it's 30 minutes, it's an ideal length film, and I really like short films. Okay, so I don't know. I have a thing against like long films, and Marvel is just one long film, and I hate that. Absolutely hate it. Sorry, my cat's tail keeps getting in the way. Yeah, that's what my sort of standing is on it. But I do
it's
like
just the fact they're long. Is that the only bit you don't like?
Not that's like the thing that I hate the most is the fact that it's all
Okay.
building up to this one thing, and it's like you have to like, oh, I know that this person on this particular film did one thing and it made a massive thing at the end of it. Oh god, I can't. It's just too much build up for very little reward. I feel like. I mean, I know a lot of people would say differently, that they did enjoy the last Marvel films, but I'm sort of gonna. I think you guys are probably more well-rounded on this subject than I am. I just get angry at Marvel. So yeah, how much money did Avengers Endgame make?
Do you guys 2.8 billion was it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
$2.79 billion dollars worldwide, which is insane. You go down the list of the films. I have a list here.
Well, yeah, the top 10 international box office for 2019, 3 Marvel movies were in the top 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you look at the production budget for these films, and you look at the worldwide gross that they made back, and these films are massive cash cows, and you can see why so much money and time is invested into the Marvel films. Are they good cinema?
Oh.
What's your definition of cinema?
You tell me. You define the question.
I'm trying to find like the actual definition of it, but what I'm getting right now is it's just a movie theater. That's the only definition. So I'm trying to find it so I can attack the point that Martin's just saying that Marvel.
Okay, good cinema, I suppose. It's the Martin Scorsese thing, right?
Yeah.
I think when he means good cinema, he means a film you can you will sit in the cinema and you will, I don't know, the whole experience of being there with other people and experiencing it together. I don't know. I think there is an element of that with the Marvel films.
I have the direct quote from the Empire interview, which Scorsese said. This was, "I don't see them. I tried to, but that's not cinema." And he continues to say, "Honestly, the closest I can think of them, as well made as they are, with the actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being." That's what he said within the Empire interview, which sparked off this massive debate. And then several other filmmakers piled on, and the responses from people who worked on Marvel. To be honest, not everyone was against him. Robert Downey Jr. was on the Howard Stern show and had some very polite things to say because it's his opinion, as did Bendy Cumberbatch when he was on the Jenny McCarthy's show. So it's a whole thing. Like, I think predominantly it's whether or not you want to feel upset or not about it, but he's not God. He's a very regarded person, which is why so many people took offense to it, because they see it, that they put him on this pedestal, so rightly so, but it's just his opinion. That's it.
It is a very opinionated piece, and I think you will get people that will fervently disagree with things no matter what the opinion is. But I think it's a weird one where a lot of people do get very defensive, and they do get very offensive about films as well. Like, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I hate your particular film because sort of silly reasons," or I mean, I'm not saying that I haven't just done that, but I am saying that people will attack you based on your film opinions, and I don't know whether that's because people have a certain standing with Marvel, for example, and they like that particular character from the film, or they like what they're doing. I'm not sure what that is exactly.
Yeah, I personally think it's just because people get attached to these kind of things, and then when someone like Martin Scorsese says something which it's clearly a divisive thing to say, and it's going to get reactions on both sides of the spectrum. And and I think the people who react negatively just are coming from that place of attachment to something that they love, and they want to protect it.
I can understand that. Yeah.
But at the same time, though, his comments are not going to affect the box office because the people who enjoy them. That is just it's that it. I think it's a personal thing. It's that thing of, this is not cinema, therefore you are illiterate in the world of cinema. It feels more of an attack because these people have a preference, and I don't think it is that. I think they are enjoyable, but know how much is entertainment and how much is that level of humanity, because they do have elements of both, but it is overpowered by this unnecessary use of CGI.
Do you think that, because so I actually have not seen Endgame, and we'll specifically talk about Endgame at the moment, but I was thinking, do you think there was decisions in Endgame that show that it was only done for the money, and they only made that film and geared it especially to make money and just appeal to as wide an audience as possible? Because I'm pretty sure, wasn't it cut a few different ways for different countries, like China, for example? Because I know China doesn't like certain things about some of those films. But yeah, is it geared to make money? Is that the point of the films?
I think it's any film's goal is to overall make money. It's a business at the end of the day. They're a studio company. They want to make money. So obviously the higher money they can make, the better. And I think they had so many expectations that they didn't want to disappoint. I've read that, they didn't just design one story for Endgame. They had others. By the way, we're supposed to be spoiler friendly on this, as in no spoilers.
No, do whatever you want, because I feel like if people are going to be watching this, they, I mean, how old's the film now? A couple of years? Yeah, you deserve to.
I just feel like you've not watched it, so
I don't care. I'm never probably going to watch this.
Okay. All right. So, they did write one for apparently where Captain America was going to die instead, and I think that maybe if you're spotting I don't know, not inconsistencies, but like some flaws, then maybe that's because they were trying to tailor the film to multiple different endings. And obviously with all films, they had a deadline to meet, which is why they did CG. For example, they didn't have the production design for the costumes, which is why they are all CG. And I arguably, yes, it does have much to CG, and but I wouldn't say it sticks out to me. I don't notice it hugely, and it's enjoyable either way.
It's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned the costumes, because in the original Iron Man, because there's on Disney Plus, if you guys have watched it, there's that 45-minute doc on about the whole plethora of these films, and it is an interesting watch, and you do get this sense of heartfelt, about how much they care about these movies, that it isn't all nickel and dimes. It is about the stories. And so the whole idea of it was because to say now that Iron Man and the Avengers and all these things, they're big, but in terms of the Marvel comics, before they came out, they were the misfits of Marvel comics, and it was your cash cows were Spider-Man and X-Men, which is why they were separate. And so Marvel Studios itself was separate to the previous films that have been made by X-Men and the X-Men and Spider-Man films, which is why it started off the MCU. So they were technically an independent company.
But didn't Sony own them at that point? Wasn't Sony the one who owned Spider-Man and or the rights to? I think they were. I might be wrong.
Sony still does own rights to Spider-Man, which is why you can't see it on Disney Plus.
Which is so
always been an argument. Yeah,
that's a very complicated situation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit weird because Disney's obviously trying to buy all the rights to all of the characters right now, and I assume. Yeah, and I assume Sony's waiting for them to offer them a significant amount of money. Although, aren't Disney making the new Spider-Man films?
Yeah, apparently there's going to be 6. I read that. I mean, that's from Facebook, so don't quote me on that. They're trying to, I think, from Facebook, which is obviously, we all know is a very reliable source. No, I just read that they're trying to get a deal where they can do 6 Spider-Man movies. And it's understandable, given if Paddy says that is their the cash cow. I think lots of people love Spider-Man. I mean, I don't know for you guys, but I think Spider-Man is my favorite, superhero out of all of them. I think Spider-Man in particular is one of the most my favorites, because I remember seeing an interview with Stan Lee, and he said that people should he was talking about if you think something's going to work and people are telling you otherwise, don't listen to them. And with Spider-Man, that was his thing. People said, hey, you can't have a superhero that's like in his teens in school. It's not going to work. And it worked. It really did. And I think that's why a lot of people our age like it, because that we can kind of like relate to him a little bit, can't we? In the fact that we've all been to school recently and we understand how it. I don't know.
We all save the world shooting spider webs.
Well, no, but I don't know. It's kind of like a make believe. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if I had Spider-Man and if I was Spider-Man and I don't know. You've got that age resemblance that you can kind of associate with. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of. I think that there is 2 Spider-Man films confirmed to be coming out. So I don't know about the 6. I'm sure there is in the pipeline along the way. There's going to be 6 Spider-Man films. But yeah, it's there was something else actually. You mentioned the CG thing before. So the scene in Endgame. I think it's in Endgame when they're all walking down this sort of long corridor, and you see them all in these cool like Avengers costumes.
Yes.
Those costumes are all CG. Which I didn't know until the other week, which I thought was weird. I don't know what the reasoning was. I think it was something to do with design, like a late design change. They thought that, actually, it looks better if they're all wearing.
A waste of bloody money, yeah.
Yeah. They sort of decided that they were having all the same outfits. Wasn't the whole time travel thing a little bit bullshit though as well? Like, I know people. Know I would be angry about that. Like, I feel like that is that. It's like, oh well, we lost, guys. I guess we'll just go to a different reality and do it there. I don't know. Like, is that stupid? Am I stupid? I don't know. I might.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I mean, that's just me. I haven't looked at everyone else's. I don't read like tons of reviews. I enjoyed the fact that they involved time travel. It made it kind of very kind of techie, kind of sci-fi. And I mean, it is in reality, isn't it? Like not time travel, but like it is that kind of genre film, because you've got superhero films. So you've gone into the cinema knowing that you're not going to watch something that's a documentary. It's going to be fiction. So why not? Like I really like that kind of tie-up of time travel. I think it was interesting how they covered it, but I can see why people might be annoyed. They might think it's too much of a kind of simple answer to wrap it all up. For me, I think they executed it really well. But again, it might just be in my opinion.
An hour of the film could have been cut just from, those pointless comedy one-liners that they've seen to put in, which is a recurring thing with some Marvel films, which I don't mind. But, Charles, you said rightly before, films can be too long. I don't mind that if it's valid. But what was left on the cutting room floor? I mean, seriously, like I've had debates with people before, well, one person at least anyway, regarding the fact that I actually thought Infinity War as a film itself, as a story from beginning, middle to end, is superior to Endgame, because whilst Endgame you have the big moments, Sam on your left and they all come through, it's great, and I got that sense of euphoria watching it in IMAX with my friend, and I felt that. But when you watch Infinity War as a whole, you get that sense of euphoria of watching a film throughout the entirety of it, because the thrill is in the chase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Endgame was ridiculously stretched out. Most of it didn't need to be in there, and it relied too much on those big moments, like, I'm going to say incorrectly, the Milieu, when Cap gets it, when Tony dies, and it relies too much on those moments, which are so big and get such an emotion out of the people who watch them, that the rest of it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it that the whole I didn't mind the time travel thing so much, but I just thought that they missed an opportunity to make it much better than it was, because essentially what happens is, for those who haven't seen it or whatever, they basically go to a different reality, a different kind of dimension version of reality, and bring that one back, so everyone can come back. But I think I would have preferred it if they'd gone back on their own kind of timeline, if you will, to get all the Infinity Stones that they needed, and then you could kind of look back on the rest of the series, the other 23, 24 films, and noticed that all the times that they went back to, there were little Easter eggs in those films that kind of alluded to what was happening in Endgame. So it kind of made the whole thing feel a little bit off the cuff almost, and like they hadn't quite planned that far ahead, which is fine. But it being very long, like you said, and I have my thoughts on the humor in these kind of films, and I think it works better in some than it does in others, but it does make that it was very long for what it was.
My major problem with the time travel thing is that anytime you introduce time travel to any film series or whatever, it always breaks a lot of the logic that has been up to that point.
Yeah.
All that build up, like, why couldn't they have just okay, I might sound stupid, but why couldn't they have just gone back in time and killed Thanos when he was a baby? Like the whole classic, why don't you go kill Hitler when he's a baby? Do you know what? Like, why didn't they just do that?
Yeah.
Then there would never have been a problem, right?
They did mention that in the film, and I can't remember what their answer was, but it was something about like
one-liner was the answer.
Yeah,
well, it's all paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, it was something.
That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, they did it. They called out, Back to the Future and all that, saying, "Oh, it's not accurate in time. You can't just do that. Otherwise, you would have nothing." I think it was because you'd have nothing to motivate you to actually do that when that alternate reality exists. I don't know. It's a very difficult topic to cover. But they did kind of cover that theory of just killing Thanos when he was a baby. But arguably, yes, there's so many ways you can go about it. Like I've seen the films, and I'm like, well, technically, what if this happened instead? And I think you can always think about that when it's a film. But I don't know. I still feel like Marvel, they did a really good job with that. And Paddy, I was interested with your point saying that did you say you prefer Infinity War as opposed to Endgame? I can see where you're coming from. I definitely agree because it's a very different film in the fact that the villain wins at the end. And I was left like shocked coming out the cinema because it was totally unexpected. Thanos walks out and then all is lost. I think that's really, really clever. And the fact that they've left that on a huge cliffhanger for the following film, Endgame, is a really good idea given, and there's no question about it in terms of the why the box office was so high in the first opening weekend. So it for me, I thought it was really good in that terms, but in that way. But I think for a lot of Infinity War, I felt like it was mostly setups. If anything, I think I prefer Endgame because all these things were coming together in the end, and finally that the pieces were being fit in the puzzle, and it was all, the big battle, the moment we've been waiting for like 22, 23 films, is all coming together now. But I can see why you would like Infinity War. I was just interested to because you're saying a lot of wasted times in Endgame, but I thought, well, surely there's lots of more wasted time in Infinity War, given it's basically mainly setups for the following year, if you get what I'm going from,
Yeah, I do get what you mean. I think it was just more of a case that, like, if you do it would take you a long time, but if you did a scene by scene breakdown of Endgame and you sat there and said, what does this provide to the story? Could it be taken out? There's a lot of it that could be taken out, but I feel like with Infinity War, there is that. I love that line that the thrill is in the chase. You think of a detective drama or something like that, which is, these tropes, they all follow the same. Cinema's been around for 120 plus years now, and these tropes of, beginning, middle, end, boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they fall in love at the end, happily ever after, they are recurring. So I think the superhero films are just the same in that they follow this trope of, hero wins in the end. But the reason why people seem to be bringing it up is because, what's going to happen. You're true, but you know that with the rom-com, you know that with the detective, you know that with many of these genre films, the reason why so many people have an issue with them is because of how much money they make. It's all to do with money more than anything else, because they're put on this pedestal, and they win, they make the money, they make the $1 billion club, and what's left for the rest of the films? That's where the issue lies. I had a point at the beginning. I went off the tangent. I don't know, but yeah, if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. I've got a few quotes here from some different people. I've just been reading through one of them here, but I do actually want to read out this quote from a Mexican director called Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu.
Inarritu, yeah.
Inarritu, yeah.
Inarritu, yeah.
So his quote was, I would be terrible at making a superhero film. I think there's nothing wrong with being fixated on superheroes when you are 7 years old, but I think there's a disease in not growing up. I sometimes enjoy them because they are basic and simple and go well with popcorn. The problem is that sometimes they purport to be profound, based on some Greek mythological kind of thing, and they are honestly very right-wing. I always see them as killing people because they do not believe in what you believe, or they're not being who you want them to be. I hate that, and I don't respond to those characters. They have been poisoned, this cultural genocide, because the audience is so overexposed to plot and explosions and shit, and it doesn't mean nothing about the experience of being human. So this is what he said about superhero films, superheroes in general. Yeah. He's not saying that he doesn't like them. He's instead saying that he thinks that they're more based on the profound, and they're stopping people from, and maybe cinema should be an experience of like, where you don't have to think too much and don't have to be political. But obviously he's looking at it from a political aspect. Should these films be political? Are they political?
I would argue that they're political. I heard a lot of people get quite upset when Captain Marvel came out because it was too political and too feminist. But you when you watch something like Black Panther, that's very political, and it goes quite deep into the politics, and it's actually really interesting. That's one of my favorite Marvel films because it goes deep into the characters' motivations and why they're doing what they are doing, especially the villain. And I find that really interesting. Tony Stark and Iron Man is political because in the first 10 minutes of the very first Iron Man movie, we know that he's a weapons dealer, and he gets attacked by one of his own weapons, and that is quite a political statement. So I don't think, and it's a massive platform as well, where kind of people can go to and learn about what they think, and they can kind of form their opinions on these kind of things. So I don't think they shouldn't be. I think there is a place for it, but I think there's a fine line between just including it and then absolutely bashing it.
Do you not think that, because I actually watched Iron Man recently, and I actually don't mind that film, but I was watching it recently and I was thinking, oh man, this is a sort of a bit of a propaganda piece for the whole war that was that war, remember, that was going on at that time. Yeah, it was 2008 when it came out.
It is a bit, yeah.
And without, you don't even need to understand the political situation to know that America was, in quite a few Middle Eastern countries at that time when that film came out. And the intro of that film is obviously an American hero, and he escapes the terrorists that are living there, even though he is a weapons dealer. And okay, it sort of moves away from that near like at the end of the film, and it's but I don't know, I thought that beginning bit was a bit weird. I don't know what it's like in the comic books, but I don't know if it was a bit of a political thing as well. I don't know, it made me feel a bit weird.
I think that was kind of purposeful, because then it heightens his kind of redemptive arc for the rest of the movie.
I think politics allows for the audience to debate. So having the films be political, it means that, when you walk out the cinema with your friends, you're like, oh, I really like this film, I think this. And actually, no, I don't think that. No, that's not right, because otherwise it allows that conversation for the film. And then therefore, I suppose I'm looking at this from a business point of view again, but therefore, people could be like, ask their friends, hey, what do you think? Oh, I've not seen it. I guess I'll have to go see it. So maybe the politics is in the film, so, people can go, to gather more audience. But
I'm glad you mentioned that, Brad. So what you're referring to there is something that we call Brechtian, in the sense that you think, not feel. And so that when you walk out, this is derived mainly from theatre, but you can apply it to cinema as well. This idea that you think, because if you have an emotional connection with a piece of some kind, there's an emotion level there. But then once the emotion is gone, it's gone. But if something is you think about it, you're thinking about it for a while, and that's a valid point. And Charlie, I think it's interesting that you mentioned regarding politics. So Spike Lee 2 years ago for the Hollywood Reporter, he was doing the Directors Roundtable. Is his name Steve Garraway? He asked the question, do you think films should be political? Because obviously he was promoting Black Klansman. And he said, well, all films are political, even if you don't have, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, it was a long time ago, But even if you don't make a film political, that in of itself is a political choice. So all films do have this level of politics in the same way that they have a moral. So when you say films are just there to be entertaining, they are. But if they don't have some sort of moral at the end, even if it's be kind to each other, then the film is complete garbage.
Yeah.
Because something that is pure entertainment still has to have a level of a lesson.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, then pure entertainment, well, what is that of itself? It's nothing. So I think with these Marvel films, I think, because I even said this myself, I think the whole thing about Thanos' plan is an interesting thing to think about. The man wants to commit genocide. And, Bradley Cooper has even said in an interview for, I think it was BBC One Radio, that Thanos kind of had a point. So someone who actually worked on the film said, can I go? So it does start to bring up those questions when you look further into it, but it's whether or not the audience want to or not. But that's completely based on the individual and what they want to get out of it.
Okay, nice. Yeah. I have something else. Does anyone else want to say anything about the politics before I move on to another point I wanted to raise?
I mean, I don't think so. I don't know if this falls into this or if it's a point that could be mentioned later on. But I think part of the character development. I mean, obviously, Marvel don't just make a villain that walks in and goes, yeah, I hate everything, therefore let's kill you and die. They always have some sort of background that you can justify that makes them, who they are in terms of trying to bring them down. So, for example, I think this is why Thanos is one of the most, I think one of my favorite villains, purely because he has a point. Are things starting to get overpopulated? And it brings that other debate in. It gets more political again, wiping out 50%. And I think that's a really interesting approach on making a villain instead of just having, no background. It's like, yeah, I'm a baddie. And I think that's really interesting.
Why didn't he just double the amount of resources in the universe?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because if you just wipe out 50%, isn't the opposite just doubling everything?
True.
I don't know. Maybe that's just another bullshit thing. But I think there's a few ways. And I understand that. Okay, yeah, he's a bad guy and he's going to do something bad. Okay, killing people is pretty bad. The other thing I wanted to talk about. So recently, this is a bit unrelated, but it'll come back to it. So recently, I have watched the new Star Wars trilogy. For the first time, for the first time, the new Star Wars trilogy. And as someone who I sort of like the old films. I'm not like, oh my god, I think they're the best things ever made, but I did enjoy them. The new trilogy, oh my goodness, I actually wish I could have not watched them now that I've seen them. I understand why people are so angry. I am worried that Disney, particularly, now Disney, if you ever want to hire me, this is just, I'm making a politics piece here. I'm just trying to, Disney.
Disclaimer.
I'm worried that the copyright thing that they in place, especially with their stupid Mickey Mouse character, which is ruining, honestly, their copyright thing is actually ruining things for small content creators. It's going to expand out to their Marvel, which it is already, to Star Wars, which it is as well, and anything else they can get their hands on. And I don't like the idea of this global multimedia corporation that owns everything and extends copyright laws and basically does whatever they want and just makes, because it ruins small content, right? And it will affect small content in the future. Is what they're doing to Marvel the same, basically? And is that, is it gonna, are the films gonna start to lessen in quality? I don't know. Is it? What are they doing? Why are we letting them do this?
Yeah, I agree. You kind of touched on this a little bit as well, didn't you, when in your episode about Netflix versus cinema, about how all these massive blockbuster films are kind of taking up all the space where smaller independent films could have got that, exposure and that kind of opportunity. So I do think that's an interesting point.
That's always been the case though since '77 when Jaws was released. It's always been the case. I mean, an independent film is, thank God we have companies like A24. But yeah, I mean that's always been a thing, and I think the thing is, if independent films became as big as the blockbusters, then eventually we wouldn't have independent cinema anymore. That whole beauty of the independent cinema is that the fact that they're not global and that a small people know about it. Yeah, it would be great to get them more exposure, but if they were too overexposed, then they would become overrated. They would, do you know what I mean? I mean, they want to make Parasite, which was a beautiful film, into an English language speaking HBO TV special.
Oh yeah, no.
What?
Oh,
Are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
But,
Leave it alone.
but in response to Disney, I think it is interesting, specifically that you mentioned Star Wars, because Star Wars was originally independent.
Yes.
That's how it started out, and now it is this global phenomenon over the years because George Lucas said, "I want the rights to the merchandise," and is now multi-billionaire. But they had humble beginnings. I think that's what you have to remember. So Disney taking over is worrying. It's very worrying. Currently, they own 60% of film companies or media companies.
Wow,
60%.
Wow.
It wasn't until they bought Fox. I studied it in my first year at Future Skills because I had to do a presentation on Disney, and what I found out was shocking. 60%.
That's insane.
It is worrying, isn't it, when you see stuff like that. And aren't they actually? I know this is a little bit unrelated again. It's back to Star Wars, but isn't George Lucas actually like getting together with a couple of other people and they're redoing the new trilogy again? Apparently,
yeah. I was going to say this. There are rumors flying around on all sorts of, YouTube at the minute, and it's really interesting to kind of follow. It's difficult to follow, but it's interesting. And the rumors are basically saying that they're considering striking the new trilogy from canon and kind of starting again.
Yeah, I heard this.
Yeah. They're flying around. It's quite hard to keep up with.
Which is a bit weird, but does he even have the rights to make anything Star Wars anymore? Because doesn't Disney own
Well,
it?
he's still been very involved as a producer, I think. And one of the rumors that I've heard recently is that there is a cut of Rise of Skywalker, the latest one, which George Lucas made. So he is involved.
Really?
Still.
It's not going to save it. Yeah. It was terrible.
No, well, yeah.
Why do you bring back characters that you killed on screen in previous films? This is unrelated. Sorry, like I don't want to get into Star Wars, but I just thought it was it was related.
That's another episode.
To the Disney thing. Yeah, that's a whole nother.
I mean, there's a whole philosophy behind the idea of bringing people who are dead back to life. What gives you the right to do that, man? Seriously?
Oh, yeah, with Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One.
And Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Who is it? Was
Carrie Fisher had already passed away by that point.
Yeah, and there was all those weird scenes with her sort of stood around and her face was like comped onto, I don't know, it was weird as fuck. It was so strange.
I think their intention was beautiful, but I think when you really look at it, it is immoral.
Yeah, using someone's face. Do we have rights to our face? This is a totally different thing. We're talking about Marvel. We're talking about Marvel.
It's all owned by Disney.
Yeah, so
my face is owned by Disney now. Yeah.
So apparently there is a phase 4 of Marvel now, and phase 4 is post Endgame content. Are they going to build up to another Endgame in another 11 years time, or do you think they're going to try and half the amount of time it takes them to build a film series canon together and quickly reap the rewards of that? Because superhero films, I feel like they're on the way out a little bit now. I think it was a cool fad for a bit, but I feel like Endgame might have been the final nail in the coffin for the superhero global film phenomenon. I think that might be starting to slowly be on the way out.
I think it's too early to tell.
Yeah, and they've got 3 films slated for 2022, so I don't.
Do people want?
I don't know if it's slowing down, but yeah, I think it's too early rather to tell. I think once those films come out, talk to us in 2 or 3 years' time when we see the numbers for those films, and you will have a better answer for that.
But then even then we haven't. I feel like you're not going to know until after that. Say 11 years when they bring out, if they do, another equivalent of
Endgame
Endgame.
2.
Because
Yeah.
basically because these are all new characters. Well, not all new characters. You've got some that are kind of bringing on, which I think is quite clever actually, because you've got some familiarity. But they're still bringing out some. I think they'll bring some new ones, and I think not all people will be comfortable. No one's comfortable with change, but to have new characters introduced to, I think people will be a bit hesitant at first to love. And then eventually after a few films, people say, oh, it's really good. And then they come together. I think you have to be slowly introduced. And then even after that, we'll see how they're doing. But it's really hard to tell if they're going to be successful or not. I mean, probably they'd be successful, but to say if superheroes are actually going downhill or not, that's a difficult one to tell.
I think I don't think it's going to crash like Heaven's Gate did in 1980. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think there may be a decline, but I don't think it'll happen for a while because Disney are smart, Marvel are smart. They're going into this new Phase 4 knowing what sells.
Yeah.
So then they're not going to have the same issues that they had when they released Iron Man back in 2008 because they now know what sells. And, doing this thing with Disney Plus with the TV shows, which I'm actually quite looking forward to be fair. But they know what sells now. They've got something that's going to work. And even if there is a backlash, I mean, you say, Jeremy, I think you mentioned up about Captain Marvel before, about which I don't want to go too much into the politics of that because that's nothing to do with myself. It was a movie for me and that's all. I wasn't a massive fan of it, I'll be honest, because for me as a story, it didn't resonate with me X, Y, and Z. But I still paid the money to go see it because it was like, okay, I want to make this decision for myself. So even if you don't necessarily, if you're indifferent about the film or don't want to go see the film, you're still probably going to end up paying the money because the marketing is so great. I could give you a list of the companies that they did cross promotions with for Endgame, and it'll either shock you or you'd be like, probably not. Audi, Coca-Cola, Geico, McDonald's, and Google, to name a few.
They had money in the Marvel films.
So they were part of a cross promotion with Endgame because Endgame was about 379 budget or something stuff like that, or 279. No, 379. No, what was it now?
Budget for Endgame.
I've got it here.
356 million pounds.
356. You want to pop another 200 million on that for marketing alone?
Yeah, because this is the money just for the film production, right? This isn't marketing. This is production costs. And they haven't ever actually released the Infinity War production costs, which is interesting. I don't know if you can find them somewhere. But I can't. I haven't got them here. I don't know. Maybe I've missed it actually.
The Infinity War budget was 316 apparently reported. It depends on which you use. If you go on the numbers.com, they've got one, but then Watch Mojo say another. So
yeah,
you're never going to get a definite number. It's always an estimate.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? But yeah. Okay. Do any of you guys want to raise anything? Is there anything you guys want to particularly that you wanted to actually talk about? Anything you wanted to, throw in there?
Because I think for me the one thing, because I got in touch with a couple of people that I know from uni who work in theatre and performance and that sort of thing, and about the issues with I've referred to it as the philosophy of acting, basically, in regards to this, because I think, as we mentioned before about the costumes and that sort of stuff, it goes a long way when you're an actor, whether that be on the stage or even on a film set as well, that, once you get into your costume and you see the set, it can do a lot for the performance. If your set is 4 green walls or blue walls and you're wearing this ping pong ball monstrosity, honestly, how they get the performances they do, I would genuinely give them an unbelievable amount of credit. But it does bring up the question, would the performances be greater if they reduced this ridiculous, amount of money on the CGI, put it into, hardworking labor to build these sets, which they've been doing for decades, and on costume designers and makeup and all these things, to get better performances. A quote that I have from a friend of mine who's a theatre performance student, this is in regards to set and costume. They give a more realistic and believable approach to the characters themselves. It makes them seem genuine, and there's nothing. And to use nothing but visual effects for the costumes, like in a Marvel film, it can distract from the audience from the actor's performance by how out of place their appearance would be. And I think that's true.
Yeah. My background's in acting and performing, so I can, I can attest to that. When you get on your costume for the first time, it completely changes your performance, and it just brings out another kind of dimension in you almost. It's weird, but and I felt that I brought this up a couple of times. I've only started watching the Marvel movies in the last few months since lockdown started, actually, because it for a kind of a lockdown project, me and my friend decided to do a podcast on them. So that's how I've ended up watching them. And when we got to, I think it was Thor was the first one where I really noticed it for the first time and really felt it, because Asgard is basically all CGI and it just feels impersonal. And I know that there's a whole army of people who've put in loads of work into it, and I appreciate it. But coming from more of a theatre background, I far more appreciate seeing a beautiful set that's been built by people's bare hands, and it just feels more personal to me, like the quote said, and it feels more genuine, and I buy into that more.
Yeah, I don't doubt.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, I don't doubt that having an actual thing, or obviously wearing actual costumes, wouldn't it would definitely improve the actor's performance. But having seen wait for the movies to come out, they had a deadline to meet. So what kind of choice did they have if they would have expanded that deadline? Let's say I don't know. Let's say we gave them 2 years to make the film instead of 1. They would have perhaps used that, but then again, would it have been successful as it is? Like they had a deadline to meet, and I'd say they executed it in a pretty good way given the time. I don't know. Do you see what I'm coming from?
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, but then I think that also goes back to that debate of, is this all, beating that kind of cash cow?
Yeah,
because they're just churning multiple films out every year rather than letting it spread out over a bit more time, so they can take a bit, there's more care put in. Not care, that's the wrong word, but a bit putting more time and more more kind of manual effort into it. Is that happening at the detriment to the art of the film, or I think that's another kind of interesting discussion to have.
For sure.
It's like Apple with the iPhone. They bring one out every year. Not much has changed. So if you're comparing, if you can easily compare these films to something like Apple, then it clearly shows you that it's more about money than it is about the art. And I think, but I don't think that's, I think that's a detriment to the people who run it. To, forgive me for saying the people's Kevin Feige and Bob Iger, that's on their hands, not the hands of the filmmakers. You've got someone like Jon Favreau, who started out making small independent films and took this risk. And you've got these great filmmakers. The Russo brothers, a similar situation. So them making these films, it's not at the hands of the filmmakers, because they want to be a part of it and they want to create art, and they do. I mean, one person we like, Taika Waititi, perfect example. He was able to make one of these cash cow films, these theme park films, but it's a quintessential Taika Waititi film, no doubt.
And it's one of the most popular ones in the whole series, isn't it?
Yeah. So regarding the money in the cash cow, it's not on the hands of the filmmakers, it's on the hands of the money people.
Yeah.
They're the ones that need to, forgive my language, get their finger out their arse and actually start caring about, you can cut that out, but actually start caring about, about the artistic endeavor behind it. It's them that need to care about this. This has been an ongoing thing since the late 80s, early 90s, when we started to see this shift in computer generated images. And we're now living in it.
Yeah.
I think how much money do you reckon they're saving having just one green screen studio that they can film all of their films in, over, you know, having to make all the models or design the sets. Because I actually want to point this out here and plug Manchester a little bit, but part of one of the new Spider-Man films was filmed in Manchester recently in
Morbius,
yeah.
I managed to take a sneak peek at the set. It was very cool.
Yeah, they turned
cool.
it all into a bit of a New York side street, didn't they?
That's cool. I didn't
and
realize.
if you went down to Northern Quarter at the time, they had placed a load of trash everywhere to make it look more like America. So there you go. that's I'm not lying. There was a load of trash bags there. It was really weird, and they were packing them all into a big truck. It was a weird experience to see, because obviously it's a lot cheaper to film in somewhere like Manchester, but the architecture and stuff is similar, I think, or it was some reason like that. So they still do use real places and real sets and stuff, but maybe not. I think a lot of the scenes are obviously, you know, CG and blah blah blah. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that thing in about Manchester because it's quite interesting, because they've done it with a few films now, and Spider-Man was one of them.
They did the same with if we want to stick on the Marvel films, they did the same with Captain America, and it's specific. I specifically realized which one it is. It's the first Avenger where he's getting beaten up and Bucky comes to save him. You can so tell that's Manchester easily.
I think though that's a really good point to raise, though, the fact that how much money did they actually save by using a green screen and all that. I think that would be actually a really good experiment to have a task where, and maybe we should do this in film production, you know, have someone that's really good at VFX and make them do it, and then have you film your other, you know, I don't know, another group actually go and do it and see which took longer and which one took more money, and then we can actually see. I think it'd be a really interesting experiment to kind of
I think it will be. I think the reality is that you probably save money. Not necessarily, because you think about how many computers. I mean, Brad, I've seen a lot of the work that you've done for as long as I've known you, and you are wonderfully technically minded, which I'm not in the slightest. Which is probably why we have these, you know, I'm on one side, you're on the other. But yeah, I mean, you know how much time it takes to do. You know, I watched your editing clip that you did for VFX. How long did that take?
Oh God, all week. That's difficult to say, because I was filming each day, and then each night I was editing that bit until like 10 o'clock. But it did take a while and a lot of thinking, so I was thinking on the spot. But that's hard to say how long that took, and it's I suppose there's
So I think personally, in terms of labor hours, it takes just as long, because, you know, it's just a case of doing it we'll fix it in post, in a case of, you know, building the sets. So I think in terms of labor hours, it's not much different. I think the thing is regarding money. I think that'd be the interesting thing to look into, which I'll happily do that research with you.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I mean, I'm going to see if I can, it might take me a couple of minutes to pull up, but I'm going to see if I can pull up my VFX essay, because there's a point I mentioned it. I think it applies to this as well with Marvel using all these VFX shots. So I'm just going to see if I can find it. Bear with, like, you can obviously still chat and bring points, but
I reckon you'd, if I was to put my money somewhere, I would reckon it would probably be cheaper to do it all on the PCs, even with the cost of PCs and stuff. But then again, actually, okay, the thing is, if you were to edit it anyway, you would still need the PC and the programs to edit it, even if you went out and shot it in the real world, because you're not gonna, I don't know, cut it together on your phone, are you? So I don't know. You know, you might have location, you know, the location that you might want to use, you might have to pay for, or, you know, you might have to, the amount of people that you might need for that, and, you know, and then, you know, how many people would it take to do, to make a short film?
I think there's more resources in physical set building, obviously, because and you know, you might have to hire multiple different companies to do carpentry and maybe, I don't know, painting or something like that. I don't know the ins and outs of how it all works, but that's just a guess. Whereas with VFX, you can just have a team of people essentially in one single building that, you know, this world. So it's difficult to say without doing the experiment that you suggested, which I also think actually would be really interesting, and that would be a fascinating little project to do. Without doing that, I don't think you're really gonna know. It's all just speculative.
Okay, so I found the point that I was looking for. So this was more talking about like Jurassic Park versus Jurassic World and why they used, like a real dinosaur. Obviously, that was because of the time and the technology they had there. But so I said that having a practical model on set is great because you can actually it's realistic movement to move a real model, but if you had it on a computer, it would be like from point A to B, very robotic almost. Anyway, but like VFX shots and things that are changed in post are beneficial because you can change pretty much anything in CG to fit the director's vision. If you film with a real life model, it is fixed and becomes extremely difficult to manipulate or remove if needed. But CGI allows for flexibility in color, movement, lighting, and even the overall look of the 3D model. And I think that's why it's preferred by Marvel, because they can just say, hey, look at this. What do you think? No, that doesn't work. You can change it. And again, that brings us into the costume. They couldn't decide what they wanted, but therefore they could use the VFX to, change it later on.
Well,
Yeah.
That's an interesting point that you raised, but I do want to say that a lot of the shots of the dinosaurs in the original Jurassic Park were actually CG models.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, okay, I get that. I know some of them were. The ones like more specifically, I know the ones that were dark in the rain when there was only like one light on them. I've watched people do Corridor Crew do an analyze it. It's really interesting actually if you get a chance to watch it.
There's a shot when he kicks when he pushes the car over. That was CG.
Yeah.
It was a lot of actually the CG equipment and stuff was pioneered by a lot of these films that you wouldn't expect. But yeah, there was a lot of CG that actually did go into Jurassic Park, interestingly, and not in sort of the way you'd expect. It was, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I need to watch the thing that I saw about it.
I think in the essay I was referring more to the scene when they're in the kitchen and those those weren't CG.
Oh yes, those were people in a suit.
And you can genuinely, I think you can definitely tell in those kids' expressions on their faces. And I think I don't know the name, but the girls the girl actress, when she was running away from that dinosaur, like Katie said to me that's genuine acting, because if you were in panic mode, you'd literally be like hands in front trying to open this door, like, and I think that really helped to make a more convincing emotion. And it's that whole argument of CG versus.
But then it comes down to the film itself, though. When
sure.
These, the Marvel films, they're so reliant on the CGI, but at the same time, if the performances didn't hold up, they would be garbage. And I think they've got intelligent casting. I will give them that. They have got beautiful casting, and I think that really just hold up. But say you look at a film like Parasite, which actually, if you watch the breakdown, that used a lot of VFX that you wouldn't expect. But that didn't distract from the film, because you genuinely didn't realize until you watch it later. You think, oh, bloody hell. But you go into a Marvel movie knowing how much is going to be there. Yeah. And so then knowing how much of it is going to be not, cinema itself isn't real, but like how much of it is CG, does that distract from the experience?
It's interesting though, because they're now mixing it. I've seen there's I can't remember what it's from, but they've developed technology now where it's just imagine like it's a little studio, like the DPL, but instead of the black curtains around the room, it's one big screen, one circular screen. They'll just use that, and it's friendly for cameras, so you're not going to see the pixels and stuff like that. So arguably, I think that's where we're going to go to in the future, in the fact that you can have that kind of reaction from the actors because they can see what's going on instead of just looking at a green screen. But also you're not going out to source that location and match the lighting conditions or all these problems that could occur, and rely on the weather. Something like that is I think a balanced solution for future productions when the technology can reduces in price. But I don't know.
The Mandalorian used this, right? Mandalorian.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah. They pioneered this new technology, which is basically they have a bit of a set. For the people with the interactive things, but the rest of it's this huge screen that wraps around the room, it looks awesome actually when you see it.
Yeah, it's very cool.
But yeah, it is an interesting way of handling this sort of the issue of green screen and making people react realistically to what's happening in their environment, right? Which I thought was really cool. Yeah, and it saves a lot of time in post production as well, because you don't need to be replacing backgrounds all the time. The background's there; it's been filmed.
There's a series on Disney Plus that's attached to The Mandalorian. I think it's called Disney Gallery or something like that, and it's a series about how they made The Mandalorian, and there's an episode or two that go really into detail about the technology and how they used I forget what they call it now. I think that it was something like the vault they called it, or something like that. The big screen room that they use. It's really interesting to see how they did it.
As the camera moves, doesn't the screen also change to reflect the parallax? So it's 3D tracked and stuff. Yeah, it's really cool actually.
Yeah, it does. They worked with Unreal Engine or Unreal, whatever they're called, so it's essentially like a game engine, because there's that theory of how in a game when you move your character, I don't know, to the left, then all the mathematics has to go really quickly to update the graphics in real time. Yeah. So they used that concept to change what the camera can see in the background in real time. It's really, really interesting.
I think I'm definitely going to look into that. But I think it's interesting you mentioned, Brad, earlier regarding the set and locations. But I mean, before they started shooting predominantly on locations for Hollywood films or films in general, it was shot all within a studio.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They built the sets so that they could control the conditions. So I think you've got a valid argument regarding shooting on location. But if they were able to do it at one point where they were able to show realistic locations that appear to be outside but are actually inside, similar to what the Mandalorian sounds like it's been attempting to, but this seems like it's more to do with the technology, which is understandable, because now that we're shooting in cameras in 4K, maybe 8K, the cameras are becoming more sensitive. So if we built so many of these sets that we used to 40, 50 years ago, that there will be that the suspension of disbelief won't be there, because you'll realize that is a set. And so I think, there's maybe this thing that Mandalorian is doing. I still have to watch The Mandalorian. I hold my hands up. But but I will check out what you guys have said, because I think that is interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, we're about hitting the time to do the thing where we wrap up. This week, instead of recommending a lockdown film, though, we're going to recommend a Marvel film, if you like, since this makes more sense. Tell us what's your guys' favorite Marvel films, and give us a quick why it's your favorite as well. If I'm gonna participate, I'm gonna say, wait, is the original Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire, is that Marvel? Does that count?
Yeah, I'll say yeah. Oh, yeah. It counts.
I'm going to say...
All right, it counts.
The original Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire, because I love that film. I watched it so many times on VHS as a kid. So, yeah, that's my favourite film out of the lot. So, yeah, you guys go ham. You tell us which is your faves.
I think my recommendation would be Black Panther. I think it's really interesting. I think it's the deepest one. I think it's the one that kind of goes into the characters' motivations the most, which is why it appeals to me the most.
I'll go with Thor Ragnarok, because it deliberately leans into that element of comedy, as we were talking about earlier, but you know from the outset that it is a comedy, and it shifts it very well, and it's with Titi. Need I say more?
Yeah, he's
I
wicked.
was gonna say the same in Thor Ragnarok, but I also kind of want to say Spider-Man Far From Home, and I can't remember what the point, I mean, it's a very good film, but I was going to say because I can't remember, it's too long ago since I watched the YouTube video, but they said something about they cheated, because I think it was an independent, I can't remember, an independent company having to live up to the expectations of a Marvel box office film, and I'm not sure, that might be completely wrong, but it was something along those kind of lines. In fact, they didn't have half as much budget, and they managed to execute a film that matched it in terms of I don't know. I think that's pretty impressive, and I do enjoy the film Far From Home, and it's super interesting.
We have Jules in the chat is recommending the 1984 Supergirl film. Don't know why she's not said, but she's just said that's the one she wants to recommend. Lucy recommends a film called Super, which is directed by James Gunn, who did Guardians of the Galaxy, and she says it's super dark. Ooh, spooky. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining the podcast today. It's been very interesting.
Thanks for having me.
Actually talking
Yeah,
about
thanks for
this
having us. It's been a lot of fun.
officially. Yeah, it's been good. I've learned some stuff. I hope you've got homework. And it's been a bit of a break from all the industry stuff as well, which is obviously important. Don't get me wrong, but it is nice to have a bit of a more of a debate discussion about opinions, which is nice. Yeah. Thank you very much everyone for watching or listening even. Don't forget you can check us out on Instagram, UOS_film production. You can check us out on Anchor FM, which distributes it to all your favorite platforms, which is the UOS Film Production Podcast. Not Twitter, but the other ones. YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, probably. I think. We're there. Go and see us. Go listen. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Nice.